Taoiseach, every week I think we've witnessed the limits of human cruelty and depravity when it comes to Israel's genocide in Gaza, and each week I'm proven wrong. Israel's missile strike on Sunday evening on a tented refugee camp in Rafah was not just a despicable human rights violation, it was depraved and inhumane. On Sunday night, displaced men, women and children cowering in tents were deliberately burned alive. One man who was pictured in the aftermath held the badly burned body of his beheaded baby in his arms. I say this not to be graphic or to shock, but because we have to talk about the reality of the hell on earth in Gaza. What we're witnessing is mass murder by a rogue government that flouts international law and ignores rulings from international courts. Israel's military initially described the missile strike as precise. Later, when even Israel's biggest cheerleaders expressed horror, Netanyahu said it was a tragic error, just like the tragic error last month that led to missile strikes on an aid convoy, killing 7 aid workers. Is there anyone who still believes that the enormous death toll in Gaza is an error? Because it is abundantly clear that civilian deaths are not just acceptable to the Israeli government, they are deliberate. Taoiseach, yesterday, as civilians in Rafah searched through ashes for dismembered remains of their loved ones, the EU issued a press statement about sanctions. In fact, it issued 2 statements about sanctions, but they weren't directed at Israel. They were about Russia. The EU has set up another sanctions regime to target Russia. Russian war crimes are rightly condemned and sanctioned by the EU. But Israeli war crimes are not just ignored, they are facilitated by the EU through the sale of arms and preferential trading. Some have referred to the meeting of EU foreign ministers yesterday as being a hopeful sign that the EU apathy is ending. Frankly, I think it's outrageous it took until yesterday and more than 36,000 deaths in Gaza for sanctions on Israel to even be discussed in a serious way. The EU has disgraced itself through its callous inaction and ambivalence on Gaza. EU leaders complicit in this carnage, like Ursula von der Leyen, should be ashamed. Taoiseach, I really welcome that today we will formally recognise the state of Palestine and that finally the Palestinian flag will fly on the grounds of Leinster House. Symbolism and solidarity are important. But what we really need are punitive sanctions on Israel, here and at EU level. Taoiseach, why won't your government take that action against Israel? Introduce the Occupied Territories Bill. At least give me the new legal advice that you promised last week I still haven't received. Don't vote for the re-election of Ursula von der Leyen and remove the diplomatic status of the ambassador.
Thank you, Deputy Kearns. Taoiseach.
Look, I want to thank Deputy Kearns for raising this very important issue, and I too, like her, welcome the fact that today Ireland will recognise the state of Palestine. I think it's a significant moment. I think it's a historic moment. I think it's an important moment, both to recognise that you can't have a two-state solution without recognising 2 states, but also I hope to create a positive momentum towards more countries now recognising the state of Palestine. And I know there are others actively considering it, and I today repeat my calls for them to join us through their national processes in the coming weeks as well. But I too am very much aware that we recognise the state of Palestine today against a backdrop that is almost unimaginable and is utterly unconscionable in terms of the humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding in Gaza, in Rafah and in the region. Children being starved, hunger being used as a weapon of war. And this country has been calling for an immediate and sustainable humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages and full, safe and unhindered humanitarian access for many, many months. We are now seeing children starving, and we are seeing children going to bed not knowing if they will wake up. But what we're also now seeing is a new despicable trend where every now and then, amidst the backdrop of death, maiming, injury, pain, we're seeing an event of particular horror that takes place And then we're seeing the Israeli Prime Minister emerge and apologise for what he terms a tragic mistake. April's tragic mistake was the bombing of aid workers providing food to starving Gazans. May's tragic mistake was the bombing of displaced children, parents and families who had fled to a designated safe zone in truly appalling scenes. Imagine taking your child to somewhere that you believe they will be somewhat safe, to have that very place of refuge then bombed, and then the apology for a tragic mistake. The question the world must now ask itself, Ireland, Europe, the United States, what will June's tragic mistake be? And much more importantly, what are we going to do to stop it? As I've consistently said, and I said at the April meeting of the European Council, there's an onus on every country and on the European Union to use every lever at its disposal to help bring about a ceasefire. It's not enough to just condemn. It's not enough to just find it repugnant. It's not enough to just be repulsed. There is a need for action. And that's why I do warmly welcome the decision of the Belgian presidency yesterday, belatedly, to convene a meeting of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. Because this country, I think there's a political consensus on this country and Spain since March have been calling for the association agreement, which is effectively a trade benefit agreement, to be reviewed. Contained within that are human rights clauses. Human rights clauses are not there for padding. They're not there to make the agreement longer. They're not there because they're nice to have. They're there and they have meaning. And those meanings must be adhered to as well. So everyone needs to look at all levers at our disposal. I have answered before the question in relation to occupied territories. I will share with you more information in relation to that. But the way I think you address this issue is through, at an EU level, the association agreement and the review of that.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Kearns.
Taoiseach, the rhetoric is great, and I think I'm blue in the face acknowledging it. What we're asking for is action that's proportionate. So you're talking about wanting the EU to use every lever available to them. And that's precisely what I'm asking you to do, because there are actions we can take as a sovereign state while the EU hasn't come round to the very obvious breach of the human rights clause in the EU-Israel trade agreement. Months ago, your predecessor, Leo Varadkar, wrote to Ursula von der Leyen seeking a review of the EU-Israel trade agreement, and she didn't even reply to the letter. She's someone who gave Israel her unqualified support for their war crimes. And yet you're happy to recommend the re-election of this person as the European Commission President. Do you really think that Fine Gael MEPs and candidates in the European election are representing their voters on this issue? Taoiseach, when international institutions fail, it's up to independent states to take a stronger stance. You're saying you can't introduce the Occupied Territories Bill because of this legal advice. You promised to show us last week, but we haven't seen it. What of the illegal Israeli settlement divestment bill? What of the diplomatic status of the ambassador? What about all of these levers that are available to you? So you're calling the EU out and saying they're not using the levers available to them. What are you going to do about the things that are available to you now?
Taoiseach.
No, I'm not calling the EU out. We're part of the EU. We joined it. We're members of it. We're around the table. And what I'm doing every single day with colleagues across government, including the Taoiseach, is working at a European level to help bring about the actions that do need to happen. Europe has not covered itself in glory in relation to this humanitarian catastrophe. I'm very clear in relation to that. Mistakes have been made. Condemnation is not enough. There needs to be clear action. It has been the position of this country and one other member state, Spain, since the month of March, that the association agreement should be reviewed. We saw yesterday the fact that there is now growing support for that position. These things don't happen by accident. They happen through the diplomatic and political efforts of this country. And we'll keep that up, and we intend to continue to engage. We're taking practical actions every day, whether it's humanitarian aid, whether it's engaging with Palestinian counterparts, whether it's talking to people in the region, whether it's the Taoiseach attending the meeting of Arab states and EU states yesterday, whether it's the recognition of the state of Palestine, working with Norway and Spain. In relation to the ambassador, I don't believe in expelling ambassadors, because I believe you keep lines open even with countries you vehemently disagree with. But what I do take grave offence to is the way our ambassador was treated in Tel Aviv. You don't parade ambassadors in front of television cameras and video them while they watch horrific films. We'd never do that to an ambassador in this country.